بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So Alhamdulillah, in regards to our hadith lessons, we have completed the introduction to hadith. We've completed the introduction to hadith where we talked about what is hadith, what is the sunnah, the importance of it, the obligation of following it, what it means to love the Prophet ﷺ, how is hadith compiled, the different books of hadith. We even talked a little bit about Mustalih al-Hadith and Fiqh al-Ahkam or Hadith al-Ahkam and other issues as well. And Alhamdulillah, we did an exam and most of you participated in that. So now inshallah, after having this good understanding of hadith itself, how hadith was compiled, what hadith is, what are the books of hadith, what are some of the main terminologies when it comes to hadith, what's a sahih hadith, what makes something authentic, and so on. We are now going to start actually studying a hadith themselves. And as you know, the book that we have chosen to go through is the 40 hadith of Imam Al-Nawawiyyah rahimahullah. And we also discussed, we had a small introduction regarding the book, the 40 hadith of Nawawi, how it was compiled, the methodology of the author. We talked about who the author was. So we've done all of that already. And we have chosen this book because this is what the ulama advise. The first book in hadith a student of knowledge should study is this book, the 40 hadith of Imam Al-Nawawi rahimahullah. And this book is only 42 hadith. We say 40 because the Arabs round up or round down. And these 40 hadith, majority of them, 29 of them are in Bukhari and Muslim. And majority of the remainder ones are also authentic, apart from one or two, which we will discuss inshallah. And we will also study the 8 extra hadith that Ibn Rajab rahimahullah added on, as we explained previously. And these ahadith, the reason that they are so important is because not only do these ahadith encompass the whole religion, but each hadith is a foundational hadith in that chapter. So not only is the first hadith إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ in the chapter of intentions, it's the main hadith when it comes to intentions. Likewise, the same thing can be said for every single hadith. So therefore, this book is one of the most important books, especially for a beginner, for any Muslim generally, but especially a student of knowledge and especially a beginner, to focus on, to understand, and if able to as well, to memorize. And the best way to memorize now is to memorize along with our lessons, because you'll memorize and at the same time we'll study the meaning as well, and it'll make it easier than memorizing by yourselves. And before we start, something very important we need to mention. If you remember, the first book that we studied was Ta'zeem al-Ilm, glorifying knowledge, or the summary of glorifying knowledge. And in there, we discussed some of the mannerisms of a student of knowledge and how to seek knowledge. Now this book is a very summarized book. Even the Asl is a very summarized book. It doesn't mention all of the etiquettes. Inshallah, we will take more of those etiquettes in the future. In level 2, inshallah, we'll study other books, Hilyat Talib al-Ilm, and then other books after that, Tazkirat al-Sami', and so on. But whatever you have learned, the minimum is you apply that. So the things that we've not taken, I'm not going to be too strict on them. But things that I have mentioned, that I know I've mentioned, whether it's in that book or whether I've just mentioned it during other lessons, then it has to be upheld. From them is that all of the students should be sat here before the teacher walks in. Never mind if I'm sat here and people are just talking at the back still. If I see that again, I'm not going to teach that day. Okay, especially with hadith, it's not on. Especially with hadith, you'll find that when they study hadith, they study Mustalah al-Hadith and so on, the introduction, the scholars would always mention the etiquettes of a student of hadith. In fact, a lot of the etiquettes of a student of knowledge are taken from the books that mention the etiquettes of a student of Hadith. Okay, it's charging. So it's very important to uphold these etiquettes. From them as well is Yusuf, move down this way. You're not to make the teacher move his head like this all the time. A bit more this way as well. Just behind the first off. Let's put it like that. Behind the first off. It's okay. And obviously can't repeat everything that's been mentioned, but keep that in mind inshallah. And if I do mention anything else, then please uphold those etiquettes. As for today's lesson, then we are studying the first hadith inshallah. Now, I am seeing some new faces. What we've done with these ahadith is that I've made worksheets for these ahadith, where the hadith is in there, translations in there, and most of what we're going to take is also in there as well. Especially when it comes to the quotes and other ahadith, I put the references in there, for the translations to that in there. And then I've left some gaps as well for the students to fill in. If you don't have them and you need them, which I would highly advise because that's what we're going to go through, and things which are already written out in here, I'm not going to repeat. So if I'm quoting a statement which is about 6-7 lines long, I'm not going to say it slowly, I'm just going to say it quickly. Okay? If you need those worksheets, then message the admin of the groups, and if you're not in the groups, then speak to us after, inshallah, and we'll give you the links to your groups, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, the way we are going to explain these ahadith, I mentioned to you before. We took it right at the end of the introduction. We said the first thing that we'll do is listen to the memorization of the hadith. So I'll go one by one, and those who have memorized can read the hadith from memory. Then we will read the hadith together and read the English translation once, so we have a rough idea of what the hadith says. Then we're going to talk about the takhrij of the hadith, which means where is this hadith narrated? Is it Bukhari? Is it Muslim? What's the hadith number? Is it narrated in more than one place in Bukhari or Muslim? And so on. And if it's not in Bukhari or Muslim, what's the ruling of the hadith? Is it authentic or not? Then ta'liqat hadithiyah, any extra hadith benefits. Any extra hadith benefits. So there may be some extra benefits that we could mention. Now, mainly, that'll be for the first few ahadith. And as a general principle, I don't want to make the explanation of these ahadith too long. The explanation, inshallah, will be between a simple explanation and between a detailed explanation. It'll be in the middle. It'll be the most important things that you need with some extra benefits here and there. However, with that being said, the first 5 hadith, we will go into some sort of detail, inshallah. The first 5 will be longer. After that, once you get to hadith number 6 onwards, then inshallah it'll be a lot more quicker. Now, when I was teaching this in Oldham, for example, hadith Jibreel, I think we took 16 lessons just on hadith Jibreel. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to see if I can summarize all of that, make it less than 16. Some extra points which may not be needed, and see if I can take it down. But that's only because hadith Jibreel is the foundation of the religion. It's got the whole, the whole thing, everything to do with the religion. You guys saw the khutb that we did before. We did a whole series on hadith Jibreel. How many khutbahs did we do? 10? Around about 10 khutbahs on hadith Jibreel. But after we move on from, after we finish hadith number 5 is about innovations. After we finish that, then inshallah hadith number 6 onwards, the explanation will be a lot more simpler bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, now we're going to start off with the memorization. Aman. I just realized I didn't complete mentioning the methodology. So I mentioned we're going to read, listen to the hadith, read the translation, do takhrij, any hadith benefits. After that, we already mentioned this anyway, but just for clarity, I'll mention some statements of the ulama regarding the status of the hadith. We'll talk about the narrator of the hadith. But the narrator, we're not going to go into too much detail, because that can be a whole lesson by itself. For example, today's hadith is Umar radiallahu anh. You can do a whole lecture on Umar, right? Just something quick, so you have an idea of who he is. The reason the hadith was narrated, explaining any difficult words in the hadith, the general meaning of the hadith, and then we go into explaining every single sentence of the hadith, and then right at the end, fawaid ukhra, any extra benefits, which we won't always touch on, but maybe here and there sometimes there'll be some extra benefits that we can mention, which is not directly linked with the hadith, or it's not something that we were able to add during the explanation. So we're going to add it at the end, inshallah ta'ala. No? Memorized? No? Ahmed? Either? No? None? Grandma, Karen? No, memorize it. Name? No. Continue. Rawahu. Musliminil. رضي الله عنهما. شو قاسم؟ Go over the harakat. Yusuf? No. Wait, how many people was that? One? Aman memorized it last year with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 4 people. I thought everyone only 4 people. 5, who's the 5th one? Who? Nuh? No. 5. 5 people. Out of everyone, just 5 people memorized. That's it. Especially this hadith, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Hadith number 50, okay, if you don't know, it's not a big issue. Hadith 1, Hadith 2, Hadith 3, Hadith number بالنيات, Hadith Jibreel, the Hadith 3 is 5 pillars of Islam, Hadith 5 about innovations. We're going to refute others and talk about bid'ah, and this guy's doing this bid'ah, but I can't memorize one hadith on it. Not red man, generally. Red man's going red. Huh? Qasim? Okay. Today we might not finish the whole hadith. I mean, you got another opportunity till Thursday to memorize the hadith. Okay? So we need more people to memorize the hadith. Otherwise, you're going to forget. We mentioned this in Ta'zim wa Ilm. You have to combine between memorization and understanding, not just one. Yes, understanding is important, but memorization is also important. And yes, you don't go to the other extreme where you just memorize and you don't understand as well. You have both. So I ask you a question. What's the dalil? If you don't memorize it, how are you going to mention the dalil to them? Right, anyways. So the hadith, the Arabic, we've heard a few times. As for the English, I'll just read it from the actual worksheets themselves. It is narrated on the authority of Amir al-Mu'mineen Abu Hafs Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, actions are by the intentions. Notice this is by the intentions. A lot of people say by the intentions. The Arabic says bin niyat, bi al niyat, by the intentions. So that's why I changed it. It seems more precise like that. So each man will have what he intended. Thus, he whose migration, and hijrah, was to Allah and His Messenger, his migration is to Allah and His Messenger. But he whose migration was for some worldly thing he might gain, or for a woman he might marry, his migration is to that for which he migrated. Narrated by the two Imams of Hadith, Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughirah ibn Bardizbah al-Bukhari, and Abu al-Husayn Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Qushayri al-Naysaburi radiyallahu anhuma, in their two Sahihs, which are the two most authentic books to be authored. So that's the hadith with the reference of the hadith. And this is mentioned by whom? All of this that we just read is a statement of Imam Al-Nawawi. This is what he's written in the book. Now, everything else you'll find in the notes. Everything else is what I've written now. So with this hadith, we've done the first 2 points, which is listening to the hadith, and secondly, which is reading the hadith. The third thing that we're going to do, what's the third thing that we said? What's the third? What do we do after that? So everyone's staring at my face. What? Huh? No, I said we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, then we're going to do that. It's mentioned in the end of the introduction on the last page. I typed it all out for you. And I repeated myself 10 minutes ago. No one person knows what's going on. Takhrij of the hadith, good. What did you open the last PDF? The takhrij of the hadith. And what does takhrij of the hadith mean? The reference of the hadith, where it's narrated, and if needed, the ruling on the hadith as well. Now, I've written for you, it is agreed upon. That's a terminology in Arabic. What's that in Arabic? Muttafaqun alayh. Muttafaqun alayh. Which means it's narrated by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. By the same companion. That part's very important. By the same companion. If the companion is different, that's considered two separate hadith. Why? Because it's two fully different chains of narration. So what does it mean by muttafaqun alayh? Agreed upon, narrated by Bukhari and Muslim from the same companion. Narrated by Bukhari and Muslim from the same companion. Now, this hadith is narrated in Bukhari and Muslim. It's actually narrated in Bukhari in a number of different places. To make it easy for you, I wrote down all the numbers for you. So it's hadith number 1 in Bukhari. So it's the first hadith in Sahih Bukhari. That's very important to keep in your mind. The first hadith in Sahih Bukhari is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And also it's hadith number 54, hadith number 2529, hadith number 3898, hadith number 5070, hadith number 6689, and hadith number 6953. Okay? All of them are written. Now I don't expect you, even I've not memorized all those hadith numbers, but the minimum that you have to know is hadith number 1. The first hadith in Bukhari is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. It's got a slightly different wording. I'm going to that slowly. And then it's also in Sahih Muslim, and in Muslim it's in one place. Hadith number 1907. 1907. Now why is it in so many different places in Bukhari and only one place in Muslim? Those that were there in the introduction should know the answer. Yeah, Imam Bukhari would repeat a hadith. Why? Because he would, whenever there's a need, he would mention it again and again and again. Whereas Imam Muslim would do what? He would just mention the whole hadith in one place with all the different chains and then move on. Like he's done that job and he just moves on. This is one of the differences between Bukhari and Muslim that we studied. Right. So that's the takhrij of the hadith. Now we're going to move on to the next thing. What's after takhrij of the hadith? Other than awab? Huh? Not chain of narration. Hadith benefits. Any extra hadith benefits which could be related to the chain, could be related to the wording. In fact, the first hadith benefit is to do with the wording. This wording that everyone memorized and you guys have read, and it's the famous wording, is actually with this exact wording, the way we've just read it, it's not found like that in Bukhari and Muslim. It's not found like that in Bukhari and Muslim. In fact, it's actually getting two riwayat of Bukhari. So remember in Bukhari it comes in more than one place. Taking two riwayat of Bukhari and put it together. It's actually taking two narrations of Bukhari and put both of them together. Now this hadith, if you look at the chain of narration, I've actually, if you look at the footnotes, I've put the Arabic for you. Okay, Imam Bukhari says, حدثنا الحميدي عبد الله بن الزبير قال حدثنا سفيان قال حدثنا يحيى ابن سعيد الأنصاري قال أخبرني محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي أنه سمع علقة بن وقاص الليثي يقول سمعت عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه على المنبر قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها أو إلى امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. Slightly different wording, not massively different, just slightly different wording. So I've put the whole hadith there and the chain of narration. And what I've done for you is in these notes I've actually drawn out the chain of narration. So I'll say it slowly just for those that don't have it so you can write it down. Okay, make sure you have space for this. So we have the Prophet ﷺ on the top. Now who heard it from the Prophet ﷺ? Umar ibn al-Khattab. So you're going to put under, maybe leave it a space as well. The way I've done it here is that I put a arrow. Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now who heard it from Umar ibn al-Khattab? Radiyallahu an. Alqamah ibn Waqas al-Laythi. Ibn Waqas al-Laythi. If you can't remember the whole name, Alqamah is enough. Who did Alqamah narrate it to? Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. Who did Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi narrate it to? Somebody called Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. He narrated it to Sufyan. In Bukhari says Sufyan. Which Sufyan is this? Huh? Not Thawri, the other one. Who's the other one? Ibn Uyaynah. Sufyan ibn Uyaynah. He narrated it to the Shaykh of Imam Bukhari, Al-Humaydi, Abdullah ibn Az-Zubair. Al-Humaydi, Abdullah ibn Az-Zubair. And he narrated it to Imam Bukhari, and Imam Bukhari wrote it in his book. So I'll go through that one more time. It was the Prophet ﷺ, he narrated it to Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu anhu, who narrated it to Alqamah ibn Waqas al-Laythi, who narrated it to Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi, who narrated it to Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, who narrated it to Sufyan ibn Uyaynah, who narrated it to Al-Humaydi Abdullah ibn Zubair, who narrated it to Imam al-Bukhari. Now Imam al-Bukhari, actually, we've done it the opposite way. How would Imam Bukhari write it? He would have mentioned the Prophet, he would have mentioned his teacher. So if you go back to what he said, حدثنا الحميدي عبد الله بن الزبير. So he had it from Humaydi. قال حدثنا سفيان بن عيينة. قال حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري. قال أخبرني محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي أنه سمع علقمة بن وقاص الليثي يقول سمعت عمر الخطاب رضي الله عنه على المنبر قال, and the rest of the hadith. So this is the chain of narration. Now normally I'm not going to do this for the other hadith. I'm not going to go through the chain of narration. But for this hadith, I'll go through the chain of narration for two reasons. Firstly, to give you, some sort of feel of some study of the chain of narration, even though we're not going to do it properly. We're not going to go through the lives of the narrator and mention are they authentic or not. They're in Bukhari, class all authentic. Okay, makes life easy. But also because there are some rulings pertaining to this. Now what's, subhanAllah, what's funny is that even though this hadith is one of the most famous ahadith, right? This hadith has not authentically been narrated by any companion other than Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. He is the only companion who has narrated this hadith authentically. Even though in some narrations it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ said this on the minbar. The Prophet said this on the minbar. Meaning he didn't say it in like a small classroom or a small gathering. He said it on the minbar where all the Sahaba were there. Yet, subhanAllah, it was only Umar radiallahu anhu who narrated it authentically. And then, after Umar, the only one who narrated it from Umar was Alqamah. Even though, as if we read the riwayah in Bukhari, Umar also mentioned it on the minbar. And then the only person who heard it from Alqamah was Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi. And the only person that heard it from Muhammad ibn Ibrahim at-Taymi was Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. And then after Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, this is where the hadith spread. This is where he had a lot of other people hearing it from him. And from those people were Sufyan ibn Uyayna and so on. So, the first 4 people mentioned in this chain of narration, in each level, they're the only narrator. The only narrator. And subhanAllah, for a hadith this famous and this important as well, it's quite ajib, quite funny to see that the only authentic chain goes back to Umar radiallahu anhu. As mentioned by Ibn al-Madin and others. Al-Khattabi says, لا أعلم خلافا بين أهل الحديث في ذلك. I do not know any khilaf, any difference or opinion between the people of hadith in regards to this. مع أنه روي من طرق كثيرة. Even though it's been narrated a lot, لكن لا يصح من ذلك شيء عند الحفاظ. But none of them are authentic, according to the scholars of hadith, apart from this one. So this hadith, what's the name of this type of hadith? Gharib, very good. Remember we said, hadith split into mutawatir and ahad. And ahad is split into mashhur, aziz and gharib. This is gharib. And this is not a normal type of gharib. It's not, remember what is a gharib hadith? A gharib hadith is where in one of the levels of the chains of narration, the lowest number is 1. So it could be 1,000 Sahaba, 1,000 Tabi'een, 1 Tabi'i, and 1,000 after him, that's gharib. Because it's one person. But it's not just one person in one level. It's one person in the first 4 levels. But even though it's like that, the hadith is authentic and accepted by the whole ummah. Which person did it spread? Yahya bin Sa'id al-Ansari. Now it's been narrated, Abu Ismail al-Harawi, he said that Yahya bin Sa'id, he narrated it, and from him 700 people narrated the hadith. From him 700 people narrated the hadith. However, Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Hafizahullah, Rahimahullah, which book has he written? Fathul Bari, the main explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari. He's a master in hadith. If you ever hear قال الحافظ the Hafiz said, خاص Ibn Hajar is referring to Ibn Hajar. When he heard this, he doubted it. 700 people narrated it, and that's found in books, and he doubted it. So Ibn Hajar, because he was master in hadith, he's known for his research. Any issue that comes up, khalas, he researches. So he researched this, and he tried to count and find all of these people. And he said he found a lot, but he wasn't able to reach 100. So how many names was he able to find from Yahya bin Sa'id? Less than 100. Less than 100. However, that's still a lot. That's the level of mutawatir. That's still a lot. So therefore, that's the chain of narration with this hadith. And what's also funny as well is, just as this is the first hadith in Bukhari, and the first 4 people are singular, and then it spreads after that, the same is with the last hadith in Bukhari. The same goes for the last hadith in Bukhari. Last hadith in Bukhari is, the last hadith, what is it? Kalimatani habibatani ila ar-Rahman. That's the end of the hadith. I'll put it on the next page for you. Okay? That there are 2 words, 2 sentences, 2 statements, which are habibatani ila ar-Rahman, are beloved to the most merciful. Khafifatani ala al-lisan, easy upon the tongue, light upon the tongue. Thaqilatani fil mizan, but heavy on the scales. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, Subhanallah al-Azim. Saying Subhanallah wa bihamdih and saying Subhanallah al-Azim. Now, this hadith as well, I put the chain of narration. The same thing. Abu Hurairah, then Abu Zur'ah, then Umarah ibn al-Qa'qa', then Muhammad ibn Fudayl. These are singular, then it spread after that. It spread after that. Now, another hadith benefit pertaining to this is, one of the reasons the ulama mentioned, or why did Imam Bukhari place hadith innamal a'malu binniyat in the beginning. One reason is to show the importance of intentions. To show that if he's starting to write this book, he's reminding himself to only compile and author this book to for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for anybody else. And that's why you'll find many others have also done the same. So not only Bukhari, also obviously this book, Al-Arba'un Nawawiyyah, Imam Al-Nawawi followed Imam Al-Bukhari in this. Also the next hadith book inshallah that we'll study, or one of the next books, Umdatul Ahkam by Abdul Ghani Al-Maqdisi. The first hadith is this hadith. Also Imam Al-Baghawi in his book Masabih As-Sunnah started with this hadith, and so on. It's a very important hadith. But another reason he started off with this hadith, the ulama say, as a refutation against those that reject khabar ahad. A refutation against those who reject khabar ahad. So we mentioned previously that khabar ahad is what? Is where it's opposite of mutawatir, where there's not a lot of people in the chain of narration, in simple terms, right? And then you'll find that many of people of innovation, one of the things that they innovated that is not found in the speech of the Salaf, and it's not found in the books of Hadith until Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah, who passed away in the year 463. He took it from the Usuliyun and added it. He's the first person to add it in the book of Hadith, the splitting of Mutawatir and Ahad. The people of innovation did what? They took this as a means of rejecting Hadith, because they couldn't answer the Ahadith which are authentic. So they said, look, in Aqidah, in our beliefs, if there's one person in one of the levels, he could have made a mistake. Therefore, that doesn't give us 100% certainty, and therefore we're going to reject the hadith, because our belief we have to have 100% certainty. So in making of these principles that none of the Salaf mentioned, they rejected hadith. So it's as though Imam al-Bukhari, who's written a book that the whole ummah has agreed upon and accepted, he starts off with khabar ahad and he finishes off with khabar ahad also. Yeah, so that's one benefit that the ulama mentioned. Another thing that we can mention in regards to the hadith is something called Lata'if al-Isnad, which I've translated as the gems of the Isnad. Lata'if al-Isnad, I'm not going to mention too much here, but Lata'if al-Isnad is basically gems of the Isnad, extra things regarding the chain of narration, which are nice extra benefits, but they don't really affect the authenticity. Okay? For example, the son narrated from his father, or all of the narrators are from a certain land, and so on. So I'll mention a few with this hadith. The first is that all of the narrators are from the lands of revelation. All of the narrators are from the lands of revelation. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu was from where? Mecca and moved to Medina. So Mecca and Medina. Alqamah ibn Waqqas al-Laythi was from where? Medina. Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Taymi was from Medina. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari was from Medina. Sufyan ibn Uyayna was from Mecca and Medina. Al-Humaydi also from Mecca and Medina. So all of the narrators were from the lands of revelation. In there you could say that maybe Imam Bukhari was saying an indication that we should always go back to the revelation, always go back to the wahi. Even the narrators, we get them from the lands of revelation as well. The second is, so Imam Bukhari heard this hadith from many teachers, but who did he choose to start off with? Al-Humaydi. And Al-Humaydi is from the word hamd. So some ulama have said he wanted to start off his book with Al-Hamd, praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also another thing with Al-Humaydi as well is that he was Qurashi. He's from the tribe of Quraysh. And the Prophet said, قَدِّمُوا al-Quraysh. That give preference to the Quraysh. Start off with them. Out of respect for the Quraysh and the status. قَدِّمُوا al-Quraysh. Start with them. So he started with Al-Humaydi. And there are some other lata'if as well, which we can, leave off for now. Now, this hadith, we're going to come to some of the statements of the ulama regarding this hadith in a second. But before we go on to what the ulama have said regarding this hadith, it's also important to acknowledge that this hadith, or the meanings found in this hadith, is not specific to this hadith. The meanings can be found in the Quran. The meaning of making the religion and all the actions that we do sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it can be found in so many ahadith, and it can be found in so many statements of the ulama. Right? Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he said in his explanation of Al-Arba'un, and you might find to prepare for these lessons, a number of books that I used, and depending on the topic, I wouldn't just use the explanations of Arba'in, I would use a book on that topic, separate book. However, you might, from the people you'll hear me quote a lot to Ibn Uthaymeen, his sharh of the 40 hadith, and his sharh is good. It's a mixture, it's not too difficult, it's got a bit of everything, and it's in English, so you can follow that as well. And also Ibn Rajab, he's got the main explanation of the 40 hadith from Nawawi, which is called, what's it called? You didn't do the introduction. You're not caught up. Ranma? You don't know? Haider? Ahmed? Aman? لا, this is the main explanation of Arba'in. جامع العلوم والحكم. جامع العلوم والحكم. Anyway, so you'll hear me quoting them a lot. Anyways, Ibn Uthaymeen, he says, لم يروي هذا الحديث عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا عمر مع أهميته. Nobody narrated this hadith on the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم except for Umar with its importance. Yani with the importance of the hadith, only Umar narrated it. However, he then says, لكن له شواهد في القرآن والسنة. But it has a lot of shawahid from the Quran and Sunnah. Shawahid means yani other proofs from the Quran and Sunnah. Other proofs that prove the same point from the Quran and Sunnah. Then he mentions a few. وَمَا تُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ مُحَمَّدٌ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, and so many other ayat. So the point being is that topic of intention is a very important topic, which you have to give a lot of importance to, because Allah gives importance to it in the Quran. You'll find we're going to mention a few other hadith, and there are also many statements of the Salaf. We'll come to a few of them, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Right, the next thing, we are finished now from hadith benefits. What's the next topic? The status of the hadith. So status of the hadith is where we will mention some of the statements of the scholars regarding this hadith. Now, especially with the hadith, I've actually typed out most of them. There's only two that you have to write out yourselves. The first one, which I've already written out for you, is a statement of Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, who said, لو صنفت كتابا في الأبواب لجعلت حديث عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه في الأعمال بالنيات في كل باب. If I was to author a book in chapters, then I would make the hadith of Umar ibn al-Khattab رضي الله عنه regarding actions being by the intentions in every chapter. So he says, what? If I was to write a book, in every chapter I'll put this hadith. Why? Because of the importance. Every chapter I need to remind myself. We took the statement of some of the Salaf in Ta'zim al-Ilm, who said that I thought narrating one hadith requires one intention, but I realized one hadith needs a number of intentions. Maybe you start the hadith for the sake of Allah, then you see something and your intention changes. So Abdurrahman al-Mahdi is saying, every chapter I'll put this hadith in there. I need to constantly remind myself of my intention and making sure that it is sincere for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Shafi'i has a very powerful statement, and it's a very small statement as well. Now, I've not written this in your notes, you have to write this yourself. And this one, I want everyone to memorize. The statement of Imam al-Shafi'i. He says, هذا الحديث ثلث العلم. This hadith is a third of knowledge. هذا الحديث ثلث العلم. This hadith is a third of knowledge. ويدخل, and it enters. في 70 بابا من الفقه, into 70 chapters of fiqh. And it enters into 70 chapters of fiqh. 70. This hadith is a third of knowledge, and it enters into 70 chapters of fiqh. هذا الحديث ثلث العلم ويدخل في 70 بابا من الفقه. So he's saying, of all of knowledge comes back to three things. A third of them, one of those three is this hadith. And we'll explain a bit more. Some ulama have said half, some have said a quarter. We'll get to the other statements. But then he says, وَيَدْخُلُ فِي 70 بَابًا مِنَ الْفِقْهِ. This hadith enters into 70 different chapters of fiqh. This hadith enters into so many different chapters. When you study the science of Al-Qawa'id Al-Fiqhiyah, legal maxims, you'll find the first major legal maxim that all of the ulama agree upon is this hadith, Al-Umuru bi-Maqasidiha, which is based upon this hadith. And you'll find the examples that they give, how they apply it. So they'll apply, let's apply it. If I pray salah, 2 raka'at, what's differentiating that between the 2 raka'at of the sunnah of Fajr and Fajr itself? My intention, that's salah. Wudu, or I go for a ghusl, I go for a shower after playing football. What differentiates that from being a normal action and that being maybe a ghusl for Friday, or sunnah, or even an obligatory ghusl? What differentiates it? Niyyah. Likewise for zakah, likewise for everything. Even in transactions. If I said to you, let's say this phone cost £1,000. I said to you, because you're my friend, I'll gift it to you for £500. I'll gift it to you for £500. Is that a gift or is it a transaction? It's a transaction. What I mean by gift is that I'll give it cheaper because you're my friend. So here, what rulings would you apply to this transaction? The rulings of gifts or the rulings of transactions? Transactions. Why? Because that was the intention. It was a transaction. Even though the wording was gift. So, what do we use? This hadith. Look at divorce. If a person gives divorce to his wife with statements which aren't clear. So if he says a clear word, right, there's no, even if he was joking, he was lying, he had the intention, it doesn't matter. If he says, I divorce you, class, it's divorce. But with statements, because the Prophet said there's no joking around in these in three things, one of them was divorce. But if he says something like, go back to your mother's house, I don't want to see you ever again, anything like that, is that a divorce or not? Yeah, don't say no straight away. Depends on the intention. If he intended, this is divorce, then it's a divorce. If he just meant, right, leave me alone for like a day or something, give me some time to think, then that's not a divorce. So it goes back to this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So look at the fiqh of Imam Shafi'i, how he summarized all of that. The hadith is a third of knowledge, and it goes وَيَدْخُلُوا فِي 70 بَابٍ مِنَ الْفِقْهِ, and it enters into 70 different chapters of fiqh. Imam Ahmad, he says, and I've written this for you, the foundations of Islam revolve around 3 ahadith. The hadith of Umar, actions are by the intentions, which is this hadith. The hadith of Aisha, whoever innovates in our affair, what is not from it is rejected. That's hadith number 5, that we'll study. And the hadith of Nu'man ibn Bashir, the halal is clear and the haram is clear, which is hadith number 6. Imam Ahmad said the same thing. The whole religion comes back to 3 hadith. This is one of them, this is the third. And these 3 hadith, they are the foundation of the religion. The first hadith tells you, make your action sincerely for Allah. Hadith 5 tells you, don't innovate in the religion, follow the sunnah. So you do the action, do it in the manner the Prophet did it. And then the 6th hadith, which is the third one that he mentioned, tells us that if you know something halal, you can do it. If something's haram, stay away from it. And any grey areas, stay away from that as well. That's your methodology for life now. Okay? So anything halal, do it. Halal, or you can do it. Haram, stay away from. Any grey areas, stay away from it. And if you are going to do an action, make sure you follow the sunnah, make sure it's sincerely for Allah. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, you have to write this one. He says, كان المتقدمون من شيوخنا, that the earlier scholars from our teachers, يستحبون تقديم حديث إنما الأعمال بالنيات. They would prefer, mustahab, they would recommend to give preference to the hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Run my way in writing. أمام كل شيء, in front of everything. i.e. before anything. So in front of everything. ويبدأ من أمور الدين. And you start with this before any of the other affairs of the religion. لعموم الحاجة إليه في جميع أنواعها. Due to the general need of this hadith in all of its types. Due to the general need of the hadith in all of its types. So he said, the earliest scholars from our teachers used to prefer to give preference to hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات in front of anything or in front of everything, and start with it in the matters of the religion due to the general need for it in all of its types. Imam Al-Nawawiyyah rahimahullah, and I've written this out for you, he said, it is an authentic hadith which is agreed upon its authenticity and agreed upon its great status and magnificence, and it is one of the principles of Iman and the first and most important pillar. Ibn Hajar, he says, and I've written it out again, Abdul Rahman al-Mahdi and al-Shafi'i have agreed, as mentioned by al-Buwaiti, and Ahmad and Ali ibn Abdini and Abu Dawood and Tirmidhi and Daraqutni and Hamza al-Kinani have also agreed. All these people have agreed that this hadith is a third of Islam. Then there are those who say it's a quarter of Islam, and they differ in identifying the remaining ahadith. So those that say it's a third, they'll say this is one of them, the other two, some might mention something else. And Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, finally his statement, he said, this hadith is one of the ahadith that Islam revolves around. That's why the scholars say Islam revolves around 2 ahadith. They are this hadith and the hadith of Aisha. Whoever does an action which our affair is upon, then it is rejected. Translation. Okay, I'll have to double check this translation. It's basically the same thing. That's brackets anyway, so it's fine. So as you can see from all these statements, I know it's quite a few statements, but this just shows us the importance of this hadith. And how the ulama, some have said it's half the religion. Why? Because any action to be accepted, 2 conditions. It has to be sincerely for Allah, and you have to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Some have said a third, some have said a quarter. Okay, now we move on to the next part, which is talking about the narrator of the hadith. Now, as I said, not going to go into a lot of detail regarding the narrator of the hadith. And this narrator of the hadith, you all know. Who is the narrator of this hadith? Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, who accepted Islam in which year? The 6th year after Hijrah? After prophethood. 6th year after prophethood. And when he accepted Islam, he gave honor to the Muslims. As Ibn Mas'ud said, that once Umar accepted Islam, we were honored. And one of the examples Ibn Mas'ud he gave was that they weren't able to pray openly. When Umar accepted Islam, he went to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, "Are we not upon the truth?" The Prophet said, "Yes, of course." So Umar said, "Then why are we praying secretly? Let's go out." So the Umar walked out, and Hamza was there as well. And the Muslims prayed openly. And because Hamza and Umar were there, none of the Quraysh were able to do anything to them. And then when the Prophet passed away, Abu Bakr became the Khalifa, and Umar became the Khalifa at what age? At what year? 13th after Hijrah. And he passed away in the year? 23. So he reigned for 10 years. He reigned for 10 years. So Umar passed away in the year 23 after Hijrah. And there were ayat that came down agreeing with Umar radiallahu anh. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr would say one thing, Umar would say something else. Then Allah would bring down an ayah agreeing with Umar radiallahu anh. In one statement of Umar, he said, 3 ayat agreed with me. And some ulama say, there's 4. And he conquered many lands as well. And this was Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, which I'm sure all of you have heard of. The second Khalifa of the Muslims, known as Amirul Mu'mineen. And the best companion after Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. His name was Umar. Obviously his father's name was Al-Khattab. His kunya was Abu Hafs. His kunya was Abu Hafs. That's why in the beginning it says Amirul Mu'mineen Abi Hafs. That was his kunya. And as for his title, his laqab, he had 2. Amirul Mu'mineen, the leader of the believers. So he got this once he became the Khalifa. The leader of the believers, Amirul Mu'mineen. And the other was Al-Faruq. Al-Faruq. The one who differentiates between the truth and falsehood. I think in English they say the criterion. Furqan is the same. الذي يفرق بين الحق والباطل, the one who differentiates between the truth and falsehood. Okay. The next issue is something called Sababul Wurud. Now Sababul Wurud is similar to Sababu An-Nuzul. In Quran, we have something called Sababul Nuzul. Sababul Nuzul is the reason that this ayah was revealed. So Sababul Wurud is the reason why the Prophet ﷺ said this hadith. Okay, so it's the same thing. It's the same thing, but Sababu An-Nuzul is for Quran, and Sababul Wurud, Waw Ra Waw Dal, Sababul Wurud is for hadith. We also have another one which is called Sababu Tahdith. Sababu At-Tahdith. What does Sabab al-Tahdith mean? Anyone know? Qasim, you were there for this lesson in Oldham. Forgot it? Right. Sabab al-Tahdith is the companion or the narrators. Why did they narrate the hadith? Sabab al-Wurud is why the person say it. Sabab al-Tahdith is why did the companion say it. Right, so okay, sometimes they can just be, there might not be a reason. Likewise, many ayah, there might not be a reason. But sometimes there might be a reason. Something happened, so a companion said, yes, I heard the Prophet say this. That's important because that shows the fahm of the Sahaba, the fahm of the Salaf. How did the Salaf understand and apply these ahadith? And this is important because it's going to come in hadith number 2. In hadith number 1, we're not going to talk about Sabab al-Tahdith, but hadith number 2 is going to come, Sabab al-Tahdith. Okay, as for Sabab al-Wurud, the reason for this hadith, anyone know the reason why the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ? Due to marriage. Who got married? Qais. Yeah? Yes, some people some of the muhaddithun have mentioned that there was a person, he migrated to Medina to marry a woman called Qais. So this person's name he was given a name or a nickname, Muhajir Qais. Muhajir, and the one that hijrah for the sake of Qais. Now, you'll find some muhaddithin that say that this hadith or this story is false. like Ibn Rajab, for example. And then you'll find others that say it's authentic. What's correct, bi'idhnillah? What's correct is that this story is authentic and it took place. This story is authentic and it took place. However, that story has no relation with this hadith. And the Prophet did not say إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ due to this person. There's no narration that gives us that indication. So yes, the story took place, and the Prophet said this, but there's no link between the two. Okay, the Prophet didn't say these words due to that story. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, so therefore, the story is true, but the link to this hadith is not. The next thing is explaining some of the difficult words. Now obviously the difficult words, as you've seen, I put in brackets, Gharib al-Hadith. Who remembers the book that I got you guys to memorize regarding Gharib al-Hadith? Too many books, huh? Al-Nihaya. I'll give it away. Al-Nihaya fi Gharib al-Hadith. By not Ibn Hajar, not Ibn Rajab, not a famous Ibn that you know. Ibn al-Athir. I believe has to be 606. Okay, now obviously these difficult words are more to do for Arabic students. In English, you just translate, even to words like an unknown word in Arabic, the translator will probably find out and just translate it in English and you won't realize. Okay, so it's more for the Arabic, but I still mention a few here and there. So al-a'mal means actions, and obviously this is a word which is known, but we're going to talk more about this word into detail. What exactly does it mean here? Niyyah means intention. Again, we're going to talk about it. Al-hijrah is migration. Okay, maybe a difficult one is yusibuha. What does yusibuha mean? Yusibuha means to attain something. Yahsuluha, to attain something. And then yankihuha means to marry, from the word nikah. Yankihuha means to marry. Or imra'atin yankihuha, or a woman yankihuha, he wants to marry, i.e. wants to do nikah with. Now, okay, what's the general meaning of this hadith? This hadith is a foundational hadith when it comes to intentions, and it informs us that every action requires an intention, and the acceptance and the reward of those actions are dependent upon the intention. The acceptance and reward of those actions are dependent upon our intentions. Now, before we actually go through the sentences of the hadith, and the rest of the sentences itself we'll go through maybe next lesson, inshallah. Today, I just want to do an introduction regarding intentions and go through a number of important issues pertaining to intentions. So that's why in the notes, if you go to page 7, you're going to see from there, I've written that on the top, for this hadith, before explaining its sentences, it is important to go through an introduction regarding intentions. Okay. The first, quite straightforward, quite easy. The first two questions are quite straightforward. What is the linguistic definition of niyyah? Niyyah means intention. Niyyah means intention. Yeah? Some Arabs, they would say, Nawaka Allahu bi khair. Nawaka Allahu bi khair, which means, may Allah intend good for you. May Allah intend good for you. And some have also mentioned that the word niyyah goes back originally to the word nawa. Anyone knows what nawa is? Allah says in the Quran, Inna Allah faliqul habbi wan nawa. It's basically the date seed. The date seed. I.e., it's the foundation of it. It's the So every action that we do, the foundation of that is what? It's our intention. It's our intention. What's the technical definition of niyyah? Now, I'll just mention this. Ibn Uthaymeen, he said, rahimahullah, it is a determination to perform an act of worship in order to become closer to Allah. So, it's not just a thought. Now, within intentions, the ulama do talk about different levels of intentions. But generally, when you have an intention to do something, you have a determination to perform an act. Right, these two questions is there as like an intro, but they're not really needed. The next question is one of the most important ones. What are the usages of the word niyyah? This is what I want everyone to make sure that they understand properly. What are the usages of the word niyyah? Now, there are two main groups of scholars that use the word niyyah and they use it differently. The first are the fuqaha. So on the left I've written, al-fuqaha are either jurists, the scholars of fiqh. The scholars of fiqh. And the second are the ulama al-tazkiyati wa suluk, which we'll get to shortly. The fuqaha, the scholars of fiqh, when they use niyyah, then they use it for two things. The first, as you can see in the first box on the left, it says تمييز العبادات عن العادات. تمييز العبادات عن العادات. Differentiating acts of worship from customary actions. Differentiating acts of worship from customary actions. And what does this mean? This is basically the same examples that we gave before. If you've played football on a Friday and then you've gone to have a shower, right, in the morning, what differentiates between that being a shower, which is sunnah, which is your showering for Friday, and just a normal one that you're sweating and you want to clean up? What differentiates it? It is your intention. What differentiates between you just eating because you're hungry, or you eating because you want energy to worship Allah later, and therefore if you have that intention, you are rewarded as well? What's the difference between the two? Your intention. And that's why Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he just mentioned a nice fa'idah in his explanation. He says, the people of knowledge have said, عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات وعادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. He says that the people of knowledge have said, the worship of the people of heedlessness are customary actions. The worship of the people of heedlessness are customary actions. وعادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. And the customary actions of those who are vigilant are acts of worship. And the customary actions of those who are vigilant are acts of worship. What does this statement mean? عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات. That those who are heedless mean those people that don't care about their intention. They're not really, their heart's not there. They're not remembering Allah. If they do an act of worship, then it's not really an act of worship. Because true ibadah is that where you have khushu', tadhallul, you break down in front of Allah, you are humble in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person comes and he prays, and as soon as he says Allahu Akbar, he's daydreaming the whole way. Now it's an act of worship, but it's an act of worship of a person who's heedless. Right? So this statement says that the worship of the people of heedlessness are adat. Customary actions. It's just a normal thing that he does. He's just doing a customary action, a habit that he does, and that's it. The meaning of worship is not behind. It's not there. Yes, the obligation might be, tick. It might be removed from him, but is there a real reward? Is there a real benefit? Is there a real increase in his iman? Not really. وَعَادَاتُ أَهْلِ الْيَقَظَةِ عِبَادَاتِ. But the customary actions of people who are vigilant, people who are always remembering Allah, people who are alert, their normal actions that they do are acts of worship. Why? Mu'adh radiallahu anhu said, أَحْتَسِمُ نَوْمَتِي كَمَا أَحْتَسِمُ قَوْمَتِي. I have an intention for my sleep just as I have an intention for my food. Meaning when I eat food, my intention is to have energy to worship Allah. So it's a normal action that I'm doing, but I'm getting rewarded for it. When I sleep with the intention that I can wake up early and pray Qiyam al-Layl and worship Allah. So whilst he's eating, he's getting reward. Whilst he's sleeping, he's getting reward. That's the fiqh of the Sahaba. And that's why Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, rahimahullah, who passed away in the year 181. Allah, quick with that one now. He said, رُبَّ عَمَلٍ صَغِيرٍ تُعَظِّمُهُ النِّيَّةِ وَرُبَّ عَمَلٍ صَغِيرٍ تُصَغِّرُهُ النِّيَّةِ. He said that maybe a person, he does a small action, but due to the intention is something big. And maybe a person, he does a big action, but due to the intention is something small. Maybe a person, all he does is remove something from the street. He's walking, sees a branch on the road, picks it up, puts it to the side. But his intention is, that person said, the lowest part of Iman is to remove something from the street. Or I don't want harm to come to my, my community, my brothers and sisters and so on. And I want this to be a means of being good manners shown to non-Muslims for da'wah, this, that. A small action became so great in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he might find somebody who prays even Qiyam al-Layl, but he's only doing it to show off. Right? So never mind getting reward, this person is getting sin. What has differentiated between the two? Intention, the niyyah. Two people could be praying. Now they could both be doing it for the sake of Allah, but the difference could still be like the heavens and the earth. One person is praying with khushu', pondering over the meaning, remembering Allah, and the other person is just daydreaming. He's not thinking about Allah whatsoever. What differentiates between all of this? Niyyah. So anyways, back to one of the meanings of niyyah, which is tamyiz al-ibadat anil aadat, differentiating between acts of worship from customary actions. The second usage of the word niyyah, according to the fuqaha, is tamyiz al-ibadat ba'diha an ba'd, differentiating acts of worship between themselves. Differentiating between acts of worship themselves. So an example of that is praying 2 raka'at in the morning. What differentiates between those 2 raka'at being the sunnah of Fajr or Fajr itself? It's your intention. It's your intention. So therefore, these two usages, or these two meanings of intention that is used to differentiate, firstly, between customary actions and acts of worship, and secondly, to differentiate between acts of worship themselves. These two meanings are according to which group of scholars? The fuqaha, the science of fiqh. The second meaning is according to the ulama of at-tazkiyati was-suluk, the ulama of purifying the heart. Those ulama or the science or the books that talk about purifying the heart. And also this is the meaning of intention mentioned by many of the Salaf. So when the Salaf speak about niyyah, then a lot of them talk about this meaning more than the other meaning. And that's why you'll find many books. For example, Ibn Abi Dunya has a book called Kitabun Niyyah, the book of intentions. What's he going to talk about? Is he going to talk about the fiqh aspect of the rulings of different acts of worship? Or is he going to talk about the second meaning that we're going to mention? The second meaning that we're going to mention. Okay. What is the second meaning? The second meaning of intention here is al-maqsood bil-amal. What is your objective? What is your intention? Or what is your goal behind doing this action? In other words, who are you doing this action for? In other words, it's referring to sincerity. It's referring to al-ikhlas, sincerity. Who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for Allah? Are you doing it for other than Allah? What is your objective? Are you doing it to attain money? Are you doing it to increase your iman? Are you doing it to get closer to Allah? This is the second meaning of niyyah. This is the second meaning of an-niyyah. Okay, so therefore, to summarize the different meanings of the word niyyah, there's three main ones. Three meanings. right? 2 with the fuqaha, and 1 with the ulama of tazkiyati wa suluk, and used a lot by the salaf. That which is by the fuqaha is to differentiate between customary actions, normal actions, and acts of worship. And secondly, to differentiate between acts of worship themselves. And then the meaning of sincerity according to the salaf, a lot of the salaf when they would speak, and also the ulama of tazkiyati wa suluk, is regarding your intentions, regarding sincerity, who you are doing the action for. Right. Next question is, what is the ruling of the niyyah? Meaning, what's the ruling on having a niyyah? Ibn Rushd in his book Bidayat al-Mujtahid, he mentioned that all of the fuqaha have agreed that an intention is a condition for acts of worship to be accepted. For any act of worship to be accepted, all the fuqaha have agreed that it is a condition. Except for one or two small khilaf. For example, many of the Shafi'i, they don't call it a condition, they call it a pillar. Okay? And some small other things. And the main thing is that for any act of worship to be accepted, you need an intention. As for actions which are not acts of worship, then you do not need an intention. If you're eating, it's not a condition for you to intend I'm eating for the sake of Allah. If you don't have that intention, it's fine. However, if you want to be rewarded, then you have to have the intention, which we will talk about. We're going to talk about now in the next question, inshallah. The next question: which actions do not require a niyyah? Which actions do not require a niyyah? 1, okay. The first, it says at-turuk. At-turuk means things that you are meant to stay away from. Things that you should stay away from. So a very famous example of this is removing impurities, removing najasa. If you have impurities on your clothes, let's say you have urine on your clothes, and impurities is something that you should stay away from. But now that you've got impurities on it, for you to remove that impurity, do you need an intention? The answer is no. So therefore, let's say you've got some impurity on your clothes, you put it on your bed. Your mom comes along, she doesn't know, and she just throws it in the washing machine and cleans it. Now, those clothes have now been washed and cleaned without the intention of removing impurities, without removing that particular impurity from it. Because obviously your mom didn't know. Is that piece of clothing now clean, or do we have to wash it again with an intention? It's clean. Right? Unlike wudu, for example, you just jump into the water and you come out, and let's say every body part is washed, right? Does that wudu count? No, because you don't have the intention. But things that you're meant to stay away from, you don't need an intention. The second thing that you don't need an intention in is at-talaq, meaning if somebody says clear-cut words, a word which there's no other meaning except talaq, then the talaq applies. So the person says, no, I was only joking. My intention, I wasn't serious. Doesn't matter, it applies. Because Prophet said there's no joking in this matter. If you're angry, generally, Shaykh al-Islam gives 3 different scenarios regarding anger. But the general anger that a person has, yeah, it counts. Why? Nobody's going to give talaq when they're happy. You're going to be some sort of angry, aren't you? Unless it reaches the anger where you lose your intellect and you don't know what's going on. But if you're angry, yeah, that's the only time, that's the main time when talaq does take place. Nobody's enjoying themselves. Oh, this is a really nice time I'm having, right? Talaq, no. Talaq, which means divorce. If you say clear-cut wordings of divorce, then we don't look at your intention. The divorce counts. The third thing which does not require an intention is to leave off haram or to do something permissible or a customary action. So what that means here is, we can make this into two different points. One is staying away from haram, and the other is doing customary actions. So staying away from haram, what we mean by that, which is right now, is anyone listening to music? No. But are we being rewarded from staying away from music? No, we don't have the intention for it. Right? So that's what we mean. You don't need an intention to stay away from haram. However, if you do have an intention, for example, you're in a situation where somebody's put on music, or you've got music on your phone, and then with the intention you say, no, I'm not listening to music because this is displeasing to Allah, that's when you'll be rewarded for staying away from sinning. And that comes under having patience from the disobedience of Allah and so on. And the fourth is doing permissible actions or customary actions. That's what we explained before. If you're eating, sleeping, you don't need an intention. But if you do have the correct intention, then you can be rewarded. And from there, the ulama have a principle that they've mentioned, and they mention it as a secondary principle under Al-Umur bi-Maqasidiha in Qawaid Fiqhiyah, which is La thawaba illa biniyah. There is no reward except with an intention. There is no reward except with an intention. There is no reward except with an intention. Meaning, so all these customary actions that you do, if you don't have an intention, it's fine. But when will you attain reward? Only when you have the intention. So if you're eating with the intention to give me energy to worship Allah later, then you will get rewarded for eating. Likewise, as Mu'adh radhiyallahu anhu said, for sleeping as well, and so on. The next issue is, what is the time of the niyyah? Meaning, when do you have to make the time of the niyyah? Okay. When it comes to the niyyah has to be made in the beginning of the action. It has to be made in the beginning of the action. So if you're praying the salah, your intention has to be made in the beginning. Just as you're about to say Allahu Akbar, you should have intention there. Not after, and we're going to discuss, can you make it before that? But that's the asl. The asl is what? The beginning of the action, you have your intention. But I'm going to mention to you now a number of other issues pertaining to the niyyah. The first point that I want to mention regarding this is that there are two types of intentions here. The first is something called an-niyyah al-haqiqiyyah, the real intention, the real niyyah. And the second is called an-niyyah al-hukmiyyah, the ruling of niyyah. An-niyyah al-haqiqiyyah and an-niyyah al-hukmiyyah, the real niyyah and then the ruling of niyyah. The real niyyah, an-niyyah al-haqiqiyyah, is what we just mentioned. That person truly at the time when he's starting the action, he has the intention. You're about to say Allahu Akbar, your intention is that you're praying Salat al-Isha and you have the intention. An-niyyah al-hukmiyyah, and an-niyyah al-hukmiyyah is the intention even if it's not at the exact time of starting the action, we give it the ruling that yes, it's as though you had the action. And when is that? That is when, just before the action, you've had the intention, and it's not a long period of time, and then if you start that action straight away, even if at the time of saying Allahu Akbar, Iman might be elsewhere, it's fine. It still counts as an intention. Why? Because it comes as a niyyah al-hukmiyah. And I'll give an example. You come to the masjid, you've done your wudu, and there's 2 minutes left till salah. Okay? And as you're waiting, your friend comes to you, starts speaking to you, and you just start speaking to him. And Imam says Allahu Akbar, and you just say Allahu Akbar, and you start your salah. At the time of saying Allahu Akbar, you're thinking about what your friend just said to you. You're thinking about what your friend just said to you. So at the time, technically, at the time you didn't have the intention. Would we, and let's say once you started Surah Fatiha, that's when you got your intention. Now part of the salah, you've not had an intention. Would we say that your salah is still accepted? We'll say yes. Why? Because it comes under the second type of an-niyyah. Now the fuqaha do differ exactly how much is before. So some would say whatever is considered a small time customarily, that's fine. And that seems to be strongest. Some have said other things as well. But generally, if it's a very short period of time, then it is fine, bi'idhnillah. That's the first point. The second point regarding the time, now time is short anyway, is that there's an exception to this. There's an exception to there's one action where you don't need the intention in the beginning, which is, say it, fasting. When? Not Ramadan. Nafil. In Ramadan, you're talking about the other issue. That do you need an intention for every single day, or is one intention enough? That's a different issue. But fasting, nafil fasts, you do not need intention from the beginning of the day. And the dalil for that is the action of the Prophet ﷺ when he came home and he asked Aisha radiallahu anha, is there any food at home? And she said no. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, okay, I'm fasting. So if there's no food, I'll just fast, make it an act of worship. So with nafil you can do that. But with fard, no, you have to have the intention before Fajr. However, if you have the intention, let's say it's Dhuhr time, and that's when you make the intention, you say, look, you know what, it's winter, Maghrib's at 4 o'clock, it's already 1 o'clock, I'll just, I'm not eating anything, I've not done any of the other nullifiers of fasting, I might as well just keep a fast and get rewarded. So we'll say yes, if it's nafil, it's accepted. However, a person's reward only starts from the time that he made the intention. So yes, it counts as the whole fast, but the reward is only from when? The time of making the intention. Because before that he didn't have any intention. How can you be? We said the principle, la thawaba illa biniyah. There's no reward except with the intention. So that period of time where he didn't have an intention, he won't get rewarded for that. He'll get rewarded for everything else. Another issue is there's a difference between having an intention and doing istishab of the intention. The first, having the intention, as we mentioned, is a condition. And as for doing istishab of an intention, that's recommended. What does istishab of the intention mean? It means that you constantly remember your intention throughout the action. You constantly remember your intention throughout the action. So if you pray your salah, in the beginning, you pray your Isha, and you do it. But then you've daydreamed the whole way. Right? You've daydreamed the whole way. You've not done istishab of your niyyah. Compared to a person, as he's praying, he's reminding himself, and he acknowledges that he's in salah, he's speaking to Allah, he is pondering over what he's reciting. That person is doing what we call istishab of his intention. And that's a higher level. And we don't say that's a condition, because if we made that a condition, I don't think any of our salahs would be accepted. But the minimum requirement, the condition, is having the intention in the beginning. And then it's mustahab, it's recommended that you constantly keep the intention in mind throughout the act of action, throughout the action itself. Another thing, which I'll just summarize, there's a lot of detail to the next point. But generally, what breaks a person's intention is that if he's doing an action and he makes a firm intention that, okay, I'm stopping this action, I'm not doing it anymore. Okay, In a minute, I'm going to fully stop 100%. But then, just before he does it, he thinks, actually, hang on a minute, I might as well carry on. If a person has made 100% intention to break something, khalas is broken. Okay, so for that 1 minute, for example, he's praying salah in the second rak'ah, he's like, I'm going to break my salah, I'm going to go. I'll pray later. Khalas, the salah's gone. He has to pray again. Okay, and inshallah, when you study fiqh, we'll go into these issues a bit more. There is some khilaf between the fuqaha, bidhnillahi ta'ala. On the next page, I've got a question which is, where is the place of the niyyah? Where is the place of the niyyah? Okay, inshallah, we'll take this as the last issue today, and tomorrow or Thursday we'll continue taking the remaining issues of intentions and also finishing of the hadith, inshallah. The place of the intention is the heart. The place of the intention is the heart, and it's not permissible. In fact, it's an innovation to say the intention out loud. Ibn Nujaym, he said, لم ينقل عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم التلفظ بالنية لا في حديث صحيح ولا في ضعيف. He says it has not been narrated from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم that he said the niyyah out loud, not in an authentic hadith and not even in a weak hadith. It's not been narrated. And that's why there are some fuqaha that do say a person should say the niyyah. And from there you find people before they pray the salah out loud, they'll say, I make the intention that I'm praying 4 rak'ah behind this imam and I'm doing this. And sometimes the whole khutbah in of itself, right? All of that is an innovation. Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, a bit of a long statement, but he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ النِّيَّةَ مَحَلُّهَا الْقَلْبِ. Know that the intention, its place is the heart. وَلَا يُنْتَقُ بِهَا إِطْلَاقًا. It's never ever said out loud. Because you are worshipping the one who knows what the eyes see and what the hearts conceal. And Allah knows everything what is in the hearts of His slaves. And that's why it has not been narrated from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, nor has it been narrated from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum that they would say the niyyah out loud. وَلِهَذَا فَنُطْقُ بِهَا سِرًّا وَجَهْرًا بِدْعَةً. Therefore, saying the intention out loud is an innovation. And then he mentions how some of the people of knowledge have said, you should say out loud, but he says, subhanallah, yes, they may have said it, but where did the Prophet ﷺ ever say this? Where's your reasoning come? Any action that you do you say it out loud? Before opening the door, I am opening the door. And you open the door. Before you eat, I am eating. You don't do it. Right? Now, one doubt that some people may bring, they say, okay, in Hajj or Umrah, before doing Hajj or Umrah, what do we say? Labbaik Allahumma Umrah. Oh Allah, I'm here to perform Umrah. Aren't you making your intention out loud? We say two things. We say, firstly, if we were to say that I say intention out loud, then there's a proof for it. Prophet only did it for Hajj and Umrah. He didn't do it for any other action. Even though Prophet did Hajj once and Umrah 4 times. But Salah he prayed 5 times a day. It's not been narrated once. So there's a proof for it. So khalas. And secondly, that's not saying your intention out loud. That's the same as saying Allahu Akbar in Salah. It's a part of the ritual. Just like you say Allahu Akbar. And when you say Allahu Akbar, everyone knows that you've started and you've entered into the state of Salah. Likewise, by saying Labbaik Allahumma Umrah, Labbaik Allahumma Hajjan. It's a statement that you say. With that statement, you've entered into the state of Ihram. So if you don't say it, like if you're at the miqat, you've not said it yet, you're not in the state of Ihram, you can cut your hair if you want. But once you say that, then you're in the state of Ihram and you can't cut your hair, you can't cut your nails, and so on. Okay, what we'll do inshallah, we'll stop here. There are a lot of issues we've taken regarding intentions, and there's a lot more bi'idhnillah that we'll take next lesson. Make sure you guys revise this properly. Okay? I'm going to test you. If you guys don't know the answers, I'm not teaching on Thursday. Okay? I used to do that in Sulh Thalatha and then got a bit lenient with you guys, but no. It's only been 1 lesson. Make sure you revise this properly and know everything inside out. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Need time for Isha. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.